Why? Why would he leave this for me?
"Don't eat that. Someone spat in it." Those were the exact words Amara Kingsley whispered to the man in the hoodie as she placed his dinner in front of him. 6 words that cracked open an ugly truth behind the velvet curtains of one of San Francisco's most prestigious restaurants. 6 words that would soon set social media on fire, ruin reputations, and completely rewrite one woman's future. That night, Maison Dupont glowed with wealth. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, expensive wines swirled in delicate glasses. The city's elite gathered to toast success, seal deals, and pretend the world outside didn't exist. But at table 17, next to the restrooms, where the smell of lemon bleach mingled with truffle oil, something very different was happening. Amara, 24, was not supposed to be working that shift. But her little brother Jordan had a school field trip that needed paying, and tips were usually good on Fridays. She put on her cleanest uniform, tied her curls back, and smiled her way through another night of being invisible to everyone who thought their money made them more human. Until he walked in. He wasn't dressed for Maison Dupont. No Rolex, no tailored suit, no reservations. Just jeans, a worn hoodie, and tired eyes. From the moment he stepped through the double doors, the energy shifted. A pause in the chatter, a glance from the maitre d', a subtle lean from a woman in pearls pulling her purse closer. He was black. He looked ordinary. That was enough. "Put him by the bathroom," someone said under their breath. No server wanted that table. No one offered a smile. No one but Amara. She didn't know who he was, didn't care. What she saw was a man treated like he didn't belong. What she gave him was the same thing she gave every customer: dignity. And when she saw what her coworker had done to his food, her stomach twisted. Her heart pounded. She had 2 choices: stay quiet and keep her job, or speak up and risk everything. She chose him. She warned him. He listened. He didn't argue. He refrained from asking for a manager, didn't cause a scene. He left. No tip. Just a folded piece of paper tucked beneath his untouched plate. 16 hours later, Amara would be standing in front of a glass tower in downtown San Francisco, holding that note in her hand, shaking from something she still didn't understand. But tonight, she's just a waitress, just a black girl trying to survive a system not built for her. And yet, in choosing kindness over silence, she lit a match that would spark a fire no one could ignore. Because occasionally, the smallest act of courage in the unlikeliest place is the thing that shifts everything. Stick around. What happens next will blow your mind. Amara Kingsley was the kind of woman people remembered, not because of fame or fortune, but because of how she made them feel. She had a smile that could disarm a storm, the kind that didn't just curve her lips, but lit up her entire face. Customers at Maison Dupont, even the ones who never learned her name, often referred to her as the Sunshine Girl. She'd earned that nickname not from privilege or comfort, but from resilience born out of hardship. Amara was 24 years old, with honey-brown skin that glowed under the dim lights of the restaurant, almond-shaped eyes that held entire stories, and natural curls she wore tied back in a high puff. Her uniform was always spotless, her apron pressed, and her shoes polished. Not because anyone told her to, but because her mother had once said, "If they already doubt you, don't give them more reason to." That voice still lived in her head, even 4 years after cancer stole her mother from her too soon. Amara had grown up in East Oakland, in a 1-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother and younger brother Jordan. Her father had been gone before she could say daddy, and her mother worked 2 cleaning jobs to put food on the table. They never had much, but the apartment was filled with music, prayers, and laughter. Her mother taught her how to stretch $5 into dinner for 3, how to sew buttons back onto old shirts, and how to hold her chin up when the world tried to lower it. When her mother died, Amara was barely 20. She dropped out of college for a while, working nights and weekends to keep Jordan in school and away from trouble. She picked up shifts at diners, babysat during the day, and even did DoorDash runs between classes when she finally returned to community college. Her major was social work. She didn't want to chase money or corporate ladders. She wanted to help kids who grew up like she did. Kids who were overlooked, misunderstood, or barely hanging on. When her mother died, Amara was barely 20. She dropped out of college for a while, working nights and weekends to keep Jordan in school and away from trouble. She picked up shifts at diners, babysat during the day, and even did DoorDash runs between classes when she finally returned to community college. Her major was social work. She didn't want to chase money or corporate ladders. She wanted to help kids who grew up like she did. Kids who were overlooked, misunderstood, or barely hanging on. Her dream was to open a youth center. Nothing fancy, just a place with warm meals, computers, tutoring, and most importantly, people who cared. Mason DuPont wasn't exactly the kind of job that moved her closer to that dream, but it paid better than anything else she could find, especially on the weekends. And on good nights, tips from the wealthy clientele could cover groceries and still leave enough for Jordan's school books. Still, the job came with a cost. She was the only black server on staff. The hostess didn't hide her disdain, and the other waiters, all perfectly groomed and well-connected, made jokes they thought she wouldn't hear. She's lucky to be here. Affirmative action in action. Bet she makes mean collard greens. Some nights she cried on the bus ride home. She cried not because of what they said, but because of what she couldn't respond to. But Amara wasn't bitter. She believed in something bigger than the walls around her. And every morning she reminded herself, you're not just working for yourself. You're working for Jordan. You're working for your mother's memory. You're working for every kid watching you to see if they should still believe. At school, she was one of the top students in her class. Her professors described her as sharp, intuitive, and emotionally intelligent. You see people, one teacher had told her, and in this field, that's everything. She saw people because she had learned what it felt like to be unseen. At the restaurant, she made a point to learn customers' names, even when they didn't care to know hers. She remembered food allergies, favorite desserts, and how Mr. Whitmore in booth 9 liked his water at room temperature with a slice of lemon. Amara made the people who ignored her feel seen, not because they deserved it, but because she refused to let their blindness infect her vision. Her kindness wasn't a performance. It was a choice. It was power. It was a protest. And it was that kindness, that radical, quiet insistence on dignity that brought her to table 17 that night. That made her step toward the man everyone else turned away from. That made her speak up, even knowing it could cost her everything. Amara Kingsley wasn't perfect. She got tired. She got angry. She had days when the weight of it all made her bones ache. But she smiled anyway. Not because she didn't see the darkness, but because she refused to let it win. And that is where this story truly begins. The first thing anyone noticed about the man was that he didn't fit. He walked into Maison DuPont like he had every right to be there, head held high, shoulders back, and a quiet confidence in every step. But to the people who judged worth by wristwatches and last names, his presence was a disruption. He wasn't wearing a tailored blazer or designer shoes. No cufflinks, no cologne, no expensive haircut. Just faded jeans, a plain black hoodie, and sneakers that had seen better days. To some, he looked like a delivery driver who had wandered in by mistake. To others, he looked like trouble. He was tall, 6'2" maybe, with deep brown skin and eyes that moved slowly, like he was reading the room before deciding what to do next. And what he saw was a room that had already made up its mind about him. The hostess gave him a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, her tone already tilted toward disbelief. "No," he said simply, "just hoping to grab dinner." She hesitated. She scanned the room like she was looking for permission, or an excuse. "Sure," she said finally, forcing the corners of her lips up. "Follow me." She led him not to the open booth near the window or the cozy corner two-top that had just been cleared. She walked him to a small table tucked beside the restrooms where the scent of bleach lingered and the sound of flushing toilets leaked through the thin walls. The man didn't complain, didn't raise an eyebrow. He just sat down, glanced at the menu, and waited. That should have been the end of it. He was stuck in a bad seat during a quiet dinner. But that wasn't how things worked in places like Maison Dupont, not for people who looked like him. The servers pretended not to see him. On their way to the kitchen, a couple passed his table, with one whispering, "Looks like someone's lost," just loud enough for others to hear. The other chuckled. No one offered him water. No one asked if he was ready to order. Until Amara noticed. She was clearing table 12 when she spotted him. The only man in the room without a wine glass, without service, without acknowledgement. She knew that look. The tight shoulders, the polite patience worn like armor. The silence begged to remain unnoticed for an extended period. And she knew what it meant to be placed near a bathroom. She had seen that trick before. So she walked over, grabbed a menu, and offered the same smile she gave every guest. "Good evening," she said softly. "I'm Amara. I'll be taking care of you tonight." He looked up, surprised. Not at her kindness, but maybe at the fact that it had taken this long for someone to show it. "Thank you," he said. His voice was smooth, calm, and deep. "I wasn't sure if I'd been forgotten." She tilted her head and gave a gentle laugh. "Not on my watch." He ordered the chef's special, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables and a glass of sparkling water. Simple, direct, nothing flashy, just a man trying to enjoy a meal. As she walked away, she felt the stares from her coworkers. One muttered, "Of course she takes that table." Another rolled his eyes, but Amara kept moving. In the kitchen, she placed his order, then lingered for a moment, watching the plate being prepared. That's when she saw it. A sudden, ugly movement from a fellow server. A quick lean forward, a disgusting spit into the food, and then laughter. Amara froze. Her blood ran cold. Her throat tightened. Every nerve in her body screamed. She could have said nothing. She could have turned around and pretended she hadn't seen anything. She could have kept her job, her tips, and her peace. But that wasn't who she was. She grabbed a clean plate, made the order fresh herself, even though it wasn't her job, and took it out to him. And when she leaned in to serve the plate, she whispered the words that would start it all. "Don't eat that. Someone spat in it." He looked at her for a long moment. No anger, no shock, just stillness. Then he nodded. "Thank you," he said. No drama, no scene. There was no yelling at the manager, just quiet gratitude, and a man who, up until that moment, wasn't supposed to matter. But he did. More than anyone in that room would know. At least, not yet. The kitchen at Maison Dupont was always hot. Not just from the flames licking under cast iron pans or the heat lamps above the line, but from the tension that pulsed behind every slammed drawer and shouted order. It was a place of pressure, ego, and hierarchy, and not everyone played fair. Amara had been in that kitchen long enough to know when something wasn't right. As soon as she stepped in to check the order for table 17, her stomach clenched. The energy was off. Too many glances. A smirk passed between two of the cooks. And then she saw him, Darren, a senior server, leaning just a bit too far over the plate meant for her guest. She couldn't see exactly what he did, but the motion was unmistakable. A small, swift spit, followed by the kind of quiet laughter that chilled her skin. Amara froze. For a second, she couldn't breathe. Her eyes darted to the plate, then back to Darren, who didn't even look ashamed. He just shrugged and muttered under his breath, "Should have eaten at Denny's." Another voice chimed in, "He won't know the difference anyway." Her fingers curled into fists. The incident wasn't a prank. The incident wasn't a joke. This was deliberate humiliation. This was hatred served on fine china. She glanced toward the head chef, but he was too busy barking orders to notice. Or maybe he had noticed and didn't care. That was almost worse. Amara's heart pounded as Darren slid the tainted plate onto the pass-through and rang the bell. "Order up," he said with a grin. Every cell in her body screamed, "Don't make trouble. Don't cause a scene. Don't risk your job." She was a single black woman working in a place where one wrong move could mean no more rent money, no more groceries, and no more books for her little brother. And this was San Francisco. No second chances, not in her world. But when she thought about the man at table 17, the way he had quietly endured the stairs, the placement near the bathroom, and the long wait without complaint, something inside her cracked wide open. She couldn't let them win. Not like this. Not again. Without a word, she picked up the tainted plate, walked it to the trash, and dropped it in. The clatter echoed. "What the hell are you doing?" Darren asked, voice low and sharp. "I'll remake it myself," she said, grabbing a fresh plate. "Properly." "You're not even allowed on the line." "Then call security." He stared at her, stunned, then laughed. "For him? Seriously?" She didn't answer. Her hands moved fast, finding the ingredients and assembling the dish. She wasn't a trained chef, but she'd watched the kitchen long enough to know how to plate salmon. As she worked, silence spread across the kitchen like a fog. No one stopped her. No one helped. They just watched. 10 minutes later, she walked back out, the clean plate balanced carefully in her hands. Her knees were shaking. When she reached his table, the man looked up, eyebrows raised. She bent slightly, placed the new dish in front of him, and said the words as softly as she could. "Don't eat that. Someone spat in it." There was a pause, a silence that stretched so long it felt like time itself had held its breath. He looked at her, really looked. He did not look at her with pity, not with anger, just understanding. And then he nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly. He didn't ask who. He didn't demand a manager. He didn't flip the table and call a lawyer. He just picked up his napkin and laid it gently over the plate and sat there for a while. Amara stood nearby, pretending to refill a glass of water at the next table, but really she was just waiting, watching, wondering what would happen next. But nothing did. After a few more minutes, the man stood, placed his cloth napkin beside the untouched food, and walked toward the exit. He didn't stop at the hostess stand. He didn't speak to anyone else, and he didn't leave a tip. Amara's heart sank, just for a moment. She hadn't done this for money, but the silence felt heavy, until she returned to clear the table and saw it. A single folded piece of paper tucked neatly under the rim of the plate. She hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for it, unfolded it, and read the words inside. The words within would fundamentally alter her life. Words that would rewrite the next chapter of her life. But she didn't know that yet. All she knew in that moment was this: she had done the right thing, and someone had noticed. Amara stared at the note like it might vanish if she blinked. It was a simple piece of paper, no fancy letterhead, no seal, no glittering signature. Just a clean white square, folded once, with handwriting that looked deliberate, strong even. She unfolded it slowly, heart thudding in her chest. 4 short lines. "I see you. You are not invisible. Come to 1900 Silver Street at 9 a.m. tomorrow. M.K." That was it. No tip, no name, no explanation. All she heard were those words, and the initials, M.K. Her first thought was confusion. Her second was that it had to be a prank. Then she noticed something else. Beneath the note, tucked halfway under the napkin, was a business card. Heavy stock. Text embossed in silver. Malcolm Knight, founder and CEO, Knight Innovations. Amara found herself breathless. She had heard that name before. Everyone had. Malcolm Knight wasn't just a CEO. He was a tech visionary. Malcolm Knight, a self-made billionaire, began building his empire from the ground up, starting with a garage in Oakland and a laptop full of ideas. He was on the cover of Forbes last year, had been named one of Time's most influential people twice, and he was black, one of the few in a world that still didn't quite know how to make room for people like him. He rarely gave interviews, kept a low profile, donated millions to causes quietly, behind the scenes. He had been sitting at her table. Amara sank into the empty booth beside the one he had just left, the note and card still in her hand. She was trembling, and she didn't know why. What did he mean, "I see you"? Why had he come to Maison Dupont dressed like that? Why let himself be treated like someone who didn't belong? And how had he watched her so closely and said nothing? The question churned in her chest, loud and impossible to ignore. She had no answers, only more questions. By the time her shift ended, the note was folded carefully and hidden deep in her purse. She didn't tell anyone about it, not her coworkers, not the manager, not even her roommate when she got home. It felt too fragile, too strange, too unbelievable to say out loud. Instead, she waited until Jordan was asleep, curled up under his Spider-Man blanket in their shared apartment, before she pulled out her laptop and typed Knight Innovations into the search bar. The first hit was their website, clean, bold, and black and white. Next came the headlines. Knight Innovations hits $10 billion valuation. Malcolm Knight, the silent giant of tech. From foster care to Fortune 500, the untold story of MK. Amara read until her eyes burned. He had grown up in the system. Bounced between homes. Started coding in high school. Won scholarships. Built apps that changed entire industries. Hired ex-cons and single moms and gave them second chances when no one else would. And tonight, he'd sat at her table and watched everything. Amara closed her laptop, sat back, and stared at the ceiling. She felt dizzy, not because of the fame or the fortune or the fact that she'd unknowingly served a billionaire his dinner next to the bathroom, but because of his words. "I see you." No one ever said that. Not to her. Not like that. She'd had spent years blending in, keeping her head down, being polite even when it hurt. She had been invisible for so long, she almost forgot what it felt like to be seen. Until now. But still, was this feeling real? The note, the address, the card, it didn't say what he wanted. It didn't promise anything. She thought it was just a moment of thanks, a nod from one person to another. But she could feel it deep down. Something was changing, like a door had opened, and she had a choice to make. Ignore it or walk through. The clock on her wall read 1:38 a.m. She set her alarm for 6, then placed the note and card on her nightstand, like a question waiting for an answer. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would be there, at 1900 Silver Street at 9 a.m. sharp. Because when the world tries to erase you for long enough, and someone powerful finally says, "I see you," you show up, no matter what. The next morning, the world didn't feel real. Amara Kingsley stood in front of the mirror brushing her curls into place, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to tame the flyaways. Her uniform, freshly ironed and clean, hung neatly on the hook behind her, but she didn't reach for it. Today, she wasn't going to the restaurant. Today, she was going somewhere that didn't make sense. 1900 Silver Street. She had mapped the address the night before. It wasn't flashy. No tall sign, no gold-plated entrance. Just a sleek, low-rise building with tinted windows and a nameplate so small she almost missed it on Google Maps. Knight Innovations. What did he want from her? She checked the note again and read it twice more. The words hadn't changed. "I see you. You are not invisible." Her stomach flipped. Gratitude? A job offer? A prank? She didn't know. And before she could walk out the door, her phone buzzed. At first, she thought it was just another spam text. But when she unlocked it, her heart dropped. Her name was trending. Not just locally, online, everywhere. The first headline read, "Billionaire Malcolm Knight denied service at high-end restaurant. Black waitress steps in." Another popped up beneath it. Maison DuPont faces backlash after discriminating against tech mogul. Someone had leaked the footage. Security camera video, grainy but clear, of Malcolm sitting at table 17 being ignored by staff and then served by Amara. The sound was muted, but you could see the moment she leaned in and whispered something. The angle didn't catch the plate swap or the spitting, but the visual was enough. And it had spread like wildfire. People were furious, outraged. One tweet had already hit over 100,000 likes. "That waitress is a damn hero. She saw what no one else wanted to see." Hashtag Amara Kingsley. Amara froze. She hadn't told a soul, not even Jordan. How had the word gotten out? Then the comments started rolling in, fast and loud. Some praised her. She should run the place. Give her a raise. Better yet, give her a company. She stood up when it mattered. But others weren't so kind. She probably planned this. Clout chaser. Bet she flirted with him to get something out of it. The worst came from people who looked like her. The kind of comments that cut deeper than she was ready for. "She's just making us look desperate. Don't turn the event into another black sob story." It didn't take long for the restaurant to issue a weak, generic statement. "We are aware of an incident involving one of our patrons and are conducting an internal review. We value diversity and take these matters seriously." By noon, major news outlets had picked up the story. Reporters started calling the restaurant. A crowd of protesters showed up outside Maison DuPont, holding signs that said "Dignity over dinner" and "I see you too." And Amara? She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through the chaos, caught somewhere between disbelief and panic. Her phone rang again. This time it was Becca, her roommate. "Girl, you're all over the internet," Becca said breathlessly. "Do you know what's happening?" "No," Amara said quietly. "I really don't." "You're treading on Twitter." Malcolm Knight, the Malcolm Knight, apparently mentioned you in a private post that got leaked. Said you had the courage of giants. Amara's throat tightened. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "I know," Becca replied, "but maybe that's why it's happening." Another buzz, this time from Jordan's school. A message from his principal. "Jordan is safe. We've had reporters outside the building. We're taking extra precautions. Please contact us if you'd like to pick him up early." It hit her like a punch to the chest. She had done one small thing, one decent, quiet thing, and now her name was being dissected by strangers. Her face was on news websites. Her little brother had to be protected at school. She hadn't signed up for any of this, and yet, deep down, she knew this storm wasn't really about her, not entirely. This storm was about being seen, being dismissed, being judged before a single word was spoken. Malcolm Knight had lived it, and so had she. But what shook her most was how quickly the world had turned her kindness into content, in a headline, into noise. And beneath all the likes and comments and hashtags, she was still just Amara, still the girl with the pressed apron who dreams too big for her paycheck. She looked at the clock. It was 8:12 a.m., 48 minutes until she was supposed to walk into Knight Innovations. Her palms were sweating, her head throbbed, but she grabbed her jacket, tied her hair, and took one last look at the note. Not for the fame, not for the cameras, not for the trending tags. She was going because someone saw her when no one else did, and that deserved an answer. By the time Amara arrived at 1900 Silver Street, her heart was thudding like a drum inside her chest. The building didn't scream wealth, it whispered it. Sleek glass, black steel, polished concrete floors that reflected the soft lighting overhead. Everything was minimalist and intentional, the kind of place where the silence felt curated. A receptionist greeted her without surprise, like she'd been expected. "Miss Kingsley," the woman asked. Amara nodded. "Mr. Knight will see you now. Right this way." She followed the woman through a wide corridor lined with framed photographs, not of awards or press clippings, but of people, real people. A young girl holding a laptop, a group of construction workers smiling in hard hats, a single mom hugging her child outside a classroom. The hallway ended at a door of dark oak and brushed metal. The receptionist knocked once, opened it, and stepped aside. "Mr. Knight, this is Miss Kingsley." The room beyond was large but not intimidating. Sunlight poured through tall windows that reviewed out the city skyline. A few potted plants sat in corners. Bookshelves stretched across one wall. The desk was clean, no clutter, no chaos. Behind it stood Malcolm Knight. This time, he was not wearing a hoodie. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, open at the collar, with no tie. His presence filled the space, not with arrogance, but with calm authority. He looked up as she entered and smiled. Not wide, not performative, just enough to feel real. "Amara," he said, "thank you for coming." She nodded, her voice caught somewhere between nerves and awe. "Thank you for inviting me." He motioned toward a chair across from his desk. "Please sit." She did, placing her purse on her lap, her fingers fidgeting with the zipper. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Malcolm leaned forward, rested his forearms on the desk, and said quietly, "You probably have 100 questions." "More like 1,000, Amara replied, half smiling, half panicked. He chuckled, deep and soft. "I imagine so." He paused, studying her face. Not in a predatory way, not like some powerful man sizing up someone he could use, but with curiosity, like he was searching for something he thought might be there. "I go to places like Maison DuPont every few months," he said finally. "Not for the food, not for the atmosphere, but to observe." "Observe what?" she asked. "How people treat someone they think doesn't matter." The words hung between them, heavier than the air around them. "I learned a long time ago," he continued, "that money doesn't change how people see you. It only changes what they think they can get from you." Amara didn't speak. She didn't need to. He looked down for a second, then back up. "My mother was a waitress," he said. "Single mom. She worked double shifts for years, saved every dollar, wore the same shoes until the soles gave out. She used to say, 'People won't remember what you served them. They'll remember how you made them feel.'" His voice caught slightly at the end, just a fraction. "She died before I made my first million," he added. "But everything I've built is because of her." Amara felt her eyes sting, but she blinked the tears away. "I saw you," he said simply. "That night, I saw you make a choice, one most people wouldn't have made. You didn't know who I was. You didn't think it would benefit you, but you did the right thing anyway." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. Inside were documents, charts, mission statements. "Knight Innovations is launching a new initiative," he said. "A program for identifying and empowering leaders from underserved communities. We're not looking for polished resumes or Ivy League degrees. We're searching for people who know what it's like to be underestimated." Amara stared at the folder. Her name was printed at the top. "We want you to be the first," Malcolm said. "A paid position, full training, flexibility to finish your degree, health benefits, and mentorship." She blinked. "I don't have a degree yet," she said. "We know. I've never worked in tech." "You're not here for tech. You're here because of your character." Amara swallowed hard. "Why me?" Malcolm leaned back, his voice steady. "Because the world doesn't change from boardrooms. It changes when someone like you stands up in a restaurant and refuses to let hate go unnoticed." The room fell silent again, but this time it felt full. Amara looked at the papers, then back at him, and slowly, nervously, she began to smile. Because maybe, just maybe, this meeting wasn't about the past. Maybe it was the beginning of something bigger than both of them. Amara sat there, hands resting on the folder, trying to make sense of everything unfolding in front of her. She had walked into this building expecting a thank you, maybe a handshake, or even a few kind words. But this? A job offer? A leadership role in a national initiative? It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff and being told she could fly. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke. "I've never led anything like this before." Malcolm nodded, as if he had expected that response. "You've led in ways that matter," he said. "When you stood up for someone you thought had no voice, that was leadership. When you made a choice to risk your own comfort for someone else's dignity, that was leadership. This program doesn't need someone who's been trained to climb corporate ladders. It needs someone who knows how to see people." He leaned forward slightly. "I don't care if you've never set foot in a boardroom. I care that you walked across a room no one else would to serve someone everyone else ignored. That tells me more than a resume ever could." Amara's heart thudded in her chest. "Tell me more about the program," she said, her voice stronger now. Malcolm smiled. He opened the folder in front of her and pointed to a section labeled Community Bridge Initiative. "It starts with 5 cities," he said. "San Francisco, Detroit, Atlanta, New Orleans, Baltimore. Each location will have a hub, a space where people can access career training, mentorship, legal support, and wellness services. But the core of it will be community leaders, people who understand the struggles firsthand, people who can guide, connect, and advocate." He paused, letting the weight of his words land. "We want you to oversee San Francisco, help build the team, work directly with partners, schools, and shelters, create trust, shape the message. You'll have a full-time salary, benefits, and a team around you. But the heart of the work will be yours to carry." Amara blinked. "That sounds huge." "It is," Malcolm said, "but you won't do it alone." A beat of silence passed. Then he added softer, "We can train skills, but we can't train heart. And you've already proven yours." She looked down at the folder again, skimming the numbers. The salary was almost triple what she made in a year at Maison DuPont. Health insurance, tuition assistance if she wanted to go back to school full-time, a transportation stipend, even a mentorship program built directly into the position. It wasn't charity, it was an investment. Still, her mind raced with doubt. "What if I mess it up?" she asked. Malcolm leaned back, folding his hands together. "Then you learn. Then we adapt. Nobody's asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to care. The rest, we figure out." Amara sat back in her chair, overwhelmed. Not because she didn't believe in herself, but because no one had ever offered to believe in her first. Her entire life had been about earning space, earning trust, earning the right to speak, to lead, to dream. And here was a man telling her she didn't have to prove anything else, that what she'd already done, just by being kind, just by standing up, was enough to be seen. And not just seen, but chosen. She cleared her throat. "Okay," she said. "Let's say I say yes. What happens next?" Malcolm smiled. "You take a week to think it over. You meet the team. We show you the space we've secured. If it still feels right, we sign papers, and you start next month. And if I say no," he shrugged, "then you walk out of here knowing that someone saw you, truly saw you, and wanted to build something with you. And there's no hard feelings. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't manipulation. It was respect." Amara stood slowly, the folder still in her hands. Her palms were sweaty. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. But somewhere beneath it all, she felt something warm flicker to life. Hope. Real, honest, terrifying hope. She extended her hand across the desk. "Give me a week," she said. "But thank you for everything, for seeing me." Malcolm shook her hand firmly. "Of course, you saw me first." As she walked out of that office, past the photographs on the wall, past the receptionist who gave her a knowing smile, Amara didn't know what her decision would be. But she knew one thing for certain. Her life had already changed. The next 3 days should have felt like a dream, but for Amara Kingsley, they felt more like a storm. She had barely made it home from Night Innovations before her phone exploded again. Texts, calls, and social media alerts. By the time she changed into sweats and curled up on her worn-out couch, the headlines had shifted. The tone had changed. and not in her favor. What began as admiration was morphing into accusation. The first wave came from anonymous accounts online. She knew who he was. This event was planned. She's playing the victim. Wake up, people. Another nobody trying to ride the race card to riches. Then came the thing pieces, the worst kind of commentary, wrapped in fake neutrality. Are viral heroes becoming opportunists? Knight's new hire raises questions about merit and media manipulation. Can you really lead a national program just because you showed basic human decency? Amara stopped reading after the third one. She shut off her phone, deleted Twitter from her home screen, but it was too late. The story had taken on a life of its own. She wasn't a woman anymore. She was content, a symbol people could mold into whatever suited their bias. The restaurant hadn't helped. Maison Dupont suspended her pending investigation, claiming they were reviewing all employee interactions related to the event in question. Translation: she was being punished for doing the right thing. Again. Her coworkers, the ones who had laughed, ignored, or mocked her for years, suddenly had a lot to say. Some went online to claim they had served Malcolm first. Others gave vague interviews hinting that Amara had a habit of overstepping boundaries. It was brutal, worse than anything she'd faced before, because this time the whole world was watching. She didn't cry until the third night. It hit her while she was folding Jordan's laundry, tucking his socks into pairs just like her mom used to do. The weight of it all, the headlines, the suspension, the judgment, the pressure, came crashing down like a wave. She slid down the hallway wall and cried into her knees. Cried for her mother, who would have known what to say. Cried for Jordan, who still didn't understand why people were being mean to his sister online. Cried for herself, the girl who'd only ever wanted to help and now felt like she was being punished for it. The next morning, she woke up to graffiti on their apartment door. Big, ugly letters scrawled in red spray paint. Liar. The neighbors didn't say much. A few avoided eye contact. One offered her bleach and a rag without a word. Jordan sighed on his way out to school. Why would someone do that? He asked, eyes wide and hurt. She didn't have an answer. Instead, she knelt down, kissed his forehead, and said, because not everyone likes the truth. She didn't tell him about the death threats, or the fake accounts pretending to be her, or the emails that showed up with subject lines like, gold digger exposed. But they were there, all of them, sitting in her inbox like ticking bombs. And through it all, Malcolm stayed silent. Malcolm made no public statement. There was no press release, just silence. She told herself he was protecting her, letting the noise die down before stepping in. But some dark part of her, the part shaped by years of disappointment, whispered, maybe he was pulling back. Maybe he regretted ever offering her a place in his world. Doubt began to creep in. Was she being naive? Had she trusted too quickly? Did she really think kindness was enough to survive in a world this brutal? By Friday night, Amara had all but made her decision. She couldn't take the job. Not like this. Not with her name dragged through mud and her safety at risk. Not when Jordan was asking questions she couldn't answer. She'd go to school, pick up another job, rebuild. That's what she'd always done. Survive, smile, keep moving. But as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling with the lights off, she couldn't stop thinking about one thing, Malcolm's words. You didn't do it for gain. You did it because it was right. She had done it for the right reasons. But was that enough anymore? Or had the world grown too loud, too cruel, and too cynical for something as fragile as decency to survive? She didn't know, but she was about to find out. Saturday morning arrived colder than usual, the kind of morning where breath fogs in the air and the streets feel quieter than they should. San Francisco's fog rolled thick over the sidewalks, blanketing the buildings in a soft gray silence. Amara stood in front of the corner cafe, wearing her thickest coat, a hoodie pulled up underneath, and dark glasses covering tired eyes. She wasn't here for coffee. She was here for answers. The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat, easy to miss unless you knew what you were looking for. According to the email she received late last night, the only message from Malcolm since their meeting, this was the place. No subject line, no explanation, just a message that read, 10 a.m., Bonnie's Cafe, ask for Rosa. She almost didn't come. Part of her wanted to ignore it, crawl back under the covers and pretend none of these events had ever happened. But the other part, the one that had gotten her through every year of struggle, every night of double shifts and empty bank accounts, told her to keep going, to keep standing. So she pushed open the door. As she walked in, a soft bell rang. The cafe smelled like coffee and cinnamon. Dusty blinds let in sunlight, which warmed the old hardwood floors. There were booths along the walls, and a single woman stood behind the counter cleaning the register with her hands. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with deep brown skin, silver curls tucked into a scarf, and eyes that held the weight of someone who had seen too much and survived it all. She didn't know, but she was about to find out. Amara approached cautiously. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Rosa." The woman looked up and, for a moment, said nothing. Then a soft smile touched her face. "You must be Amara." Amara nodded slowly. "How did you—" "He told me you'd come." Rosa motioned to a booth in the far corner. "Sit, I'll bring you some tea. You look like you need something warm." Amara hesitated, then followed her to the booth. She slid into the seat, her hands still cold from outside. A few minutes later, Rosa returned with 2 mugs of tea and a plate of warm banana bread. "I don't usually do this for strangers," she said, sliding into the seat across from Amara. "But you're not a stranger, are you?" "I don't know what I am anymore," Amara whispered. Rosa studied her for a long moment, then leaned in, elbows on the table. "Let me tell you a story," she said. 35 years ago, a woman walked into this very cafe. She was broke, pregnant, alone, looking for a job. Amara blinked. "That woman was me," Rosa continued. "I didn't have a college degree, didn't even finish high school. But the owner back then, Miss Bonnie, gave me a shot. Said, 'I don't hire paper, I hire people.'" She paused and sipped her tea. "I worked behind that counter for 15 years, saved every tip, built a life, raised a son." Amara's breath caught. Rosa nodded as if reading her mind. "Yes, that son, Malcolm." Silence fell over the table. Rosa smiled gently. "He doesn't like to talk about me much. He says he wants people to respect him for his work, not his past. But I'm proud of that boy, always have been." She looked Amara straight in the eyes now. "And I told him, 'You find people like me, son, people who didn't get the fancy starts, but still chose kindness when the world gave them nothing. You find them, and you lift them up.'" Tears stung Amara's eyes. "Why me?" she asked. "Why now?" "Because someone needs to be first," Rosa said. "Someone needs to walk through the fire so others can follow. You didn't just serve a meal, you saw a human being. And then you protected him when no one else did." Rosa reached across the table and gently placed a hand over Amara's. "You didn't do that because you wanted anything. You did it because you knew what it felt like to be overlooked." Amara's voice cracked. "I'm scared." "Good," Rosa said, her tone unwavering. "That means it matters." She leaned back and smiled again. "You think the world's going to stop talking? It won't. But neither should you." Amara looked down at the tea, steam curling in the sunlight. Her hands still trembled, but it was different now. Less fear, more weight. The weight of something real, something worth holding. Rosa stood, smoothing her apron. "Malcolm will call you tonight, but I wanted you to hear it from me first. You've got what it takes, child. Don't let the noise drown out the truth." And with that, she returned to the counter, as if she hadn't just rewritten the ending of Amara's story with a single conversation. As Amara walked out of the cafe, her eyes blurry with tears. She didn't just feel seen. She felt chosen by a woman who once stood behind the counter and now stood behind her. That night, the call finally came. Amara was sitting on the edge of her bed, her fingers tracing the spine of a half-read book she couldn't focus on. Jordan was asleep in the next room, his soft breathing the only sound in the apartment. Her phone lit up with a name she hadn't seen since their meeting. Malcolm Knight. She hesitated for half a second, then answered. "Hello?" "Amara," he said, his voice even, calm. "How are you holding up?" She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Honestly, I've been better, but I've also been worse." A quiet laugh on the other end, not mocking, understanding. "That's fair," he said. "I know things got loud." "Loud would be an understatement," she replied. Malcolm didn't apologize, not directly, but his tone shifted, softened. "I wanted to wait," he said, "until the noise settled, until you had time to think. I know what the internet can do to someone's peace." Amara nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I thought about walking away," she said. "I almost did." "Why didn't you?" She hesitated. "Because I met your mother today." Silence. "I figured she might find you," he said eventually. "Rosa has a way of showing up when people need clarity." "She asked me to stop letting the noise drown out the truth," Amara said quietly. "I haven't stopped thinking about that all day." "She's right. I know." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Just the hum of electricity in the background. Just two people, miles apart, connected by something neither of them had planned for. Then Malcolm said, "You still have the folder?" "I do." "Then open it. Page 7. Amara stood, walked to her dresser, and pulled the folder out from beneath a stack of bills. She flipped through the pages until she landed where he told her. Her breath caught. A full-page photo stared back at her, of her, from the night at the restaurant. Not from the leaked footage. This time was different, more intimate. Someone had captured the exact moment she leaned in to warn him about the tainted plate. Her eyes were focused. Her face was calm but firm. It was a portrait of integrity, of courage. "I didn't know anyone took this," she whispered. "I did. I had someone there that night, watching, not for drama, for insight. I go into spaces sometimes just to see how they work, how people behave when they think no one's watching." "And I passed some kind of test?" she asked. "You weren't being tested," he said. "You were being witnessed." That word hit differently. Witnessed. Not judged, not evaluated, not labeled. Witnessed. "I don't need to know your GPA," Malcolm said. "I saw what mattered." Amara sat back down. "The media won't let the matter go," she said. "People are still talking, still spinning stories. I don't want to become some viral token." "You're not," he said. "You're a chapter in a story we're just beginning to write. And the people who matter, they'll read every word." She looked at the photo again. She barely recognized the woman in it. Not because of how she looked, but because of how she stood. Solid, unafraid. "So what now?" she asked. "You tell me," Malcolm replied. "This is still your decision. Always was." Amara stared out the window. The city lights flickered like stars in a sky too close. Somewhere, someone was reading a headline with her name in it. Somewhere else, someone was dismissing her as lucky or fake or undeserving. But none of them had been there in that kitchen. None of them had felt the choice settle heavy in her hands. They didn't know what it meant to stand in silence, or what it cost to finally speak up. But she did. "I'm in," she said finally. "I'm tired of hiding behind the noise. Let's make something that drowns it out." Malcolm didn't cheer. He didn't clap. He just said, "Good." Because he already knew. She was ready. The spotlight wasn't something she asked for, but she had learned something in its heat. Occasionally, the only way to silence the world is to step into the center of it and speak. The sun hadn't fully risen when Amara Kingsley stepped off the bus and looked up at the building on 7th and Grand. The new San Francisco hub for the Community Bridge Initiative stood in what used to be an abandoned post office. Now, thanks to months of renovations funded quietly by Knight Innovations, the space was buzzing with new life. Wide glass windows replaced the boarded-up walls. Fresh paint wrapped the outside in soft earth tones. And above the entrance, in simple brushed steel letters, were the words, Community Bridge Initiative, San Francisco Leadership Office. Amara tightened her coat around her and stepped through the double doors. Inside, the space still smelled faintly of construction dust and fresh wood. The lobby had been designed to feel like a welcome center. Soft lighting, plants in every corner, a kids' play area to the left, and a community kitchen already humming with morning coffee. It didn't feel like an office. It felt like a home. And that was precisely the point. Miss Kingsley? A young woman in a black blazer stepped forward, holding a tablet and smiling with what looked like genuine warmth. I'm Dana, program coordinator. Malcolm said to make sure you had anything you needed today. Amara smiled. Hi, Dana. Just point me in the right direction. Dana handed her a slim badge with her name and title already printed on it. Amara Kingsley, Director, SF Community Operations. She stared at it for a moment, not because she hadn't seen it before, she had signed the paperwork, but because holding it made it real. Your office is upstairs, but we're starting the morning with a team breakfast, Dana said. Community partners are here too. We figured it'd be a softer first day. Amara followed her through a set of glass doors and into the large meeting hall. Inside, at least 50 people were already gathered, a mix of staff, local volunteers, nonprofit leaders, and even a few small business owners. Everyone was chatting, eating bagels, pouring coffee, and laughing. And then they saw her. The room quieted just slightly, enough for her to notice, but not enough to feel staged. Someone whispered her name. She stepped forward, not to a podium, not to a microphone, just to the center of the room. Good morning, she said, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach. I know a lot of you already know who I am, or at least you know the version of me that's been floating around online. A few chuckles, a few nods. But what you might not know is that I've spent the last 6 years working restaurant shifts, putting my brother through school, and wondering if kindness still mattered in a world that rewards cruelty. She paused. I'm here because I chose to believe it does, and more importantly, because someone chose to believe in me. Silence now. Not cold, but focused, respectful. She took a breath. This space is not about one person. It's not about a hero story. It's about building something better, together, for people who've been ignored, dismissed, or told they weren't worth investing in. That ends here. She smiled, not for effect, but because the words felt true. And if you'll have me, I'd be honored to build this community with all of you. Scattered claps turned into applause. Warm, real. Dana touched her elbow and leaned in. Not bad for the first 5 minutes. They both laughed. The rest of the morning moved fast. Staff intros, facility tours, schedules, and planning calls. Amara's office was small but bright, with a desk that overlooked the city rooftops and a whiteboard already filled with handwritten ideas left by the previous planning team. By noon, she was sitting across from a mother of 2 named Rochelle, who had driven 40 minutes just to ask how the program could help her finish nursing school. By 3 p.m., she had already started planning a roundtable for local high school counselors. And by 5 p.m., she was sitting on the building's rooftop garden, staring out at the city as the sky shifted from gold to blue. She was worn out, overwhelmed, but underneath it all, she felt something new growing in her chest. Purpose. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving. She was leading. Not because she was loud, not because she had a fancy degree, but because she had chosen to stand when others sat still. And now, others were standing with her. It was almost midnight when Amara let herself into the apartment. The building was quiet. The hallway smelled like old carpet and someone's late-night ramen. Her shoes made soft thuds against the floor as she unlocked the door and stepped inside. Jordan was asleep on the couch, a blanket tossed half over him, and a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the table. She smiled and set her bag down, walking over to gently lift him into her arms. He was heavier than he used to be, all growing limbs and dreams, but still small enough to fit against her shoulder like he did when he was 4. She laid him in bed, tucked the blanket around him, and kissed his forehead. Then she sat at the kitchen table, just like her mother used to, and opened the notebook she kept for nights like this. Not for to-do lists, not for work meetings, for promises. It was a simple notebook, black cover, worn edges, half filled with thoughts she never shared out loud. She flipped to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote, "A promise to Jordan." Then, in slow, careful handwriting, she wrote, "You will never feel small in rooms where you belong." She paused. The words felt both too big and not big enough, but she left them there, because they were true. Amara thought back to all the rooms she'd stood in, ones where her voice felt too soft, where her presence felt like an accident, and where people looked at her like she needed to prove something just to exist. She thought of the nights she counted quarters for the bus fare, the nights she told Jordan maybe next time when he asked for something small she couldn't afford. She thought of the long hours, the customers who never looked her in the eye, the managers who called her kid even though she was the one keeping things running. And she thought about the woman she was becoming. Not polished, not perfect, but real, present, unapologetically here. Her phone buzzed on the table. A new email. Subject, "First milestone reached. SF Hub." Amara opened it and blinked. In just 1 week, the San Francisco initiative had already processed over 300 applications. Job training interest was higher than projected, and 3 local businesses had signed up to become employment partners. She stared at the numbers for a long time. The program was working. This wasn't a dream. This was real. But with that reality came responsibility, a weight she carried not just for herself, but for every person walking through those doors with hope clutched tightly in their hands. She picked up her pen again and wrote, "I promise to make room for the ones no one sees. I promise to speak up even when my voice shakes. I promise that your big heart will never be a weakness, only a light." She closed the notebook, stared at it, and whispered, "We're going to be okay. Not rich, not famous, not untouchable, but okay." And in this world, okay meant everything. Before heading to bed, she returned to Jordan's room just to check one more time. He stirred, mumbling something in his sleep, then settled again. She stood there in the doorway, thinking of everything ahead, the battles, the learning curves, and the eyes that would still judge her. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had a team, a purpose, and a promise. To her brother, to herself, and to every person who had ever been told they were too small to matter. She wouldn't let them down. She couldn't. Because once you've been invisible, you understand what it means to be seen, and you never take that lightly again. And once someone hands you the mic, you don't drop it. You speak. There's something no one tells you when you grow up in the shadows, when you clean up messes without being asked, when you keep your head down, when you smile at customers who don't learn your name. You start to believe that your worth is tied to your silence. Staying small keeps the peace. That invisible means safe. But here's the truth Amara Kingsley learned, the hard way, the painful way, the beautiful way. You are not invisible. You were never meant to be. You matter. Even when they overlook you. Even when they talk over you. Even when they doubt you before they ever meet you. You matter when you speak up. You matter when you're worn out. You matter when all you have left is kindness and a name tag no one reads. Amara wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't a CEO. She wasn't someone the world would have expected to change lives. And yet, she did. Not because of a title, but because of a decision. A simple moment when doing the right thing would bring her no reward, and she did it anyway. You might be standing in your own version of that moment right now. Maybe it's a job where you feel unseen. Maybe it's a family that doesn't listen to you. Maybe the world keeps telling you that you're not good enough. But pay attention, you don't need anyone's permission to matter. You don't need to be in the spotlight to be important. You don't need anyone to choose you before you can start choosing yourself. That's the lesson Amara learned. That's what Malcolm saw in her. That's what Rosa believed when she opened her cafe to a young pregnant girl with nothing but courage in her hands. And that's what's true for you too. We live in a world obsessed with loudness, with perfection, with filters and followers and people who seem to have it all figured out. But real change, it doesn't start in boardrooms. It starts behind counters. It starts in classrooms, in hospital night shifts, in late-night bus rides after double shifts. It starts with you. You, the tired one but still shows up. You, the one who gives even when no one notices. You, the one who believes in kindness even when it doesn't pay back. You're not invisible, and the world needs more of you. So if you've ever doubted your impact, let this experience be your sign. The world doesn't change in explosions, it changes in ripples. And your one small act of decency might just be the beginning of someone else's miracle. If this story moved you, if you felt seen, or if it reminded you of your own quiet strength, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video. Tag someone who's been the Amara in your life, the person who showed up when no one else did. And if you're watching this, you're wondering, could that be me? Yes, it already is. You are not invisible, and your story is just beginning.